ESPN have spoken to the Premier League and they said a human error was at fault for that goal standing. Don Hutchison joins us. Craig, what a claim.
But VAR was always going to take all the human error out of it, according to some.
Well, this was it, wasn't it? We would have nothing to discuss.
It's a weekly, daily, maybe even discussion. But I thought it was. I thought the first foul was the block, which was a clear play on the spin around. And then we can't argue about the offside. It's just, it's been missed.
Yeah.
Now, watch this. I think it's Zinchenko who's trying to get back in. So there's a clear block there. That was a foul. We saw that given last year, and I think it was a game Man United, Harry Maguire. And then obviously you've just talked about there.
Yeah. So you got Saliba there. Is being blocked by a player in an
I
offside
actually thought the
position.
foul was on Zinchenko getting blocked as well, to be honest.
This is the one for me here, how you miss this. And the thing for me, listen, once humans are involved in any capacity, I keep saying there will be errors and you almost have to accept that. And there are some decisions that are subjective, that the VAR looking at it would see it one way and we here would see it as another. The block, whether it had that much of an impact on Gabriel, well, okay, I think not, but we could have that debate, as we've had all week long. Where there should be no room for discussion, where there should be no room for excuse, is something as objective as an offside decision 4 yards away from goal. And I didn't see any lines. I just assumed that the VAR saw it and it wasn't offside. But to learn after the fact that Norgard was offside, that the VAR, Lee Mason, just was looking at
the blocks. He was looking at the fouls. He was obsessed about the fouls, basically.
Looking at other things. But that should be secondary. Because again, subjective is about interpretation. The objective, you rule those out. As long as that's taken care of, then you can look at the other plays and make a personal decision on those. He got that back to front and completely wrong.
Well, the ball was in and out and in and out. But surely to God, I understand, because I was looking at a couple of fouls as well, and I honestly thought that's the only thing they were checking. But surely to God, whenever a ball is kicked or nodded back into an area, at any given point, that's where you should be stopping that to have a look.
Yes.
I.e., the header that
you work backwards, surely.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
If you look at the fouls, but then when that ball's bubbling about in the box, when it gets headed out and then it's nodded back in, anything that gets nodded or touched back in towards goal has to be stopped and looked at with lines. That would be common sense to me.
Don, you agree with Lee Mason, though?
Dan, I thought this was a very poor weekend for VAR. I was calling the game and I straight away, even in real time, because you're always looking for free kicks and teams being inventive and having imagination. And the block-off's been around in the Premier League for quite a while. And there was a clear block-off on Gabriel from Ethan Pinnock. That was the starting point. So straight away you think, that's offside. OK, maybe it was tight. It wasn't. He was offside. But then as the boys have explained, once it's bobbling in the 6-yard box, then you get the assist from Norgard. You just take it back from Ivan Toney, dropping it into the back of the net with his head, take it back to the assist. He's offside as well. So, just to blame it on human error, I think that's pretty poor. I think that's a bit of a cheap excuse. I think we've got to be better than that because it was important moments in the game. There was actually one that went for Arsenal early on in the game when Mbeumo scored and the referee penalised him on Gabriel when Gabriel actually slipped. So in the end, it sort of worked out, but Arteta's got to be fuming after that.
Well, there was a little tug on the shirt on that one, but you're right, Don. It didn't look enough to be a free kick in a former player's eyes, but I think in a referee's eyes, that's to get out.
Enough.
That's to get out. But, maybe this is a consequence of people complaining.
Over-interfering.
Not so much over-interfering, taking too long.
Right.
There's been a few VAR decisions recently that seem to have taken enough, and they've got there in the end, and it seems they've made the correct decision. On this occasion, they clearly haven't, and I just wonder if the people that are in the VAR booth are worried that it was taking a while, this check, and they were unsure. And then once in their mind they've thought there's no blocking in their mind, they've sort of rushed it from there.
Right.
Because, this is... Howard Webb's going to be on us. This is taking too long.
Howard Webb's going to be on them even more now.
But I'm just saying, maybe they're worried about the complaints. And there has been some people complaining. I've seen some incidents that have been pretty cut and dry, and they've taken ages.
Yeah.
And I just wonder in the referee's mind, in the booth, they're thinking, let's get this done.
But to that point, again, it took a long time, so nothing about this was rushed. And if you're offside, you're offside. You need one look at that. This is not a foul, or for argument's sake, the Casemiro incident where you need to see different angles to appreciate it, exactly what happened. If you're offside, you can do that straight away and deal with that, and you know, okay, he's onside, now we have to look at the other incidents, and then maybe you have a couple of different looks. Offside, it takes one. And as you say, you go backwards. Your first stop is Ivan Toney. Is he offside? Nope, he's not. That's good. Next stop, Norgard. Is he offside? Yep, okay. No. How they mess this up that badly, it's just beyond me.
But that's because that's what I'm saying, Shaq. They were so infatuated with the blocking that was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
That I do think in the end they've just rushed the rest of it through because it was taking an age.
Just panicked. Let's move away from that decision. Just talk about the performance overall. No wins in 3 now. For Arsenal. What went wrong today for them?
A bit like one or two others around them, they've just lost that little bit of sparkle. I mean, Brentford in the first half, Rico Henry at the back post clears it when he's only got to tab it in. Ivan Toney from the Mboma, great cutback from Mboma, hits the crossbar. I mean, they were super dangerous again on the attack. Lots of possession for Arsenal, but it all got sort of congested and congealed. And again, we saw Odegaard taking lots of touches. They're trying to thread that needle. It's just not as... It's a lot more disjointed than it was. It's not a disaster, but the sparkle is not there. Martinelli once again gets taken off. I mentioned Odegaard, and again, he got taken off last week at Everton, did not play brilliantly well. And we saw Saka and Nketiah in flashes. So, yeah, it's just been 2 or 3 tough games for them.
For me, first of all, I have to say I think Brentford are a very good team, and they showed it. Yeah. As far as Arsenal's feelings go, I just feel that they lack a little directness and a little pace. And I thought where Brentford were really good was they started pressing high up the park. And Arsenal and Arteta, as they like to do, trying to pass out to that pressure. I think the difference is when they were able to pass out of that pressure, they were so slow through the middle of the park that Brentford then get 2 blocks of 4 back. And again, credit to Brentford for that, but there were times when Arsenal passed out to that pressure early on, balls in the back of the net before you could figure out what's happening. And it just seems to be getting stopped in the middle of the park. And I'm with Craig in that. I think Martinelli is kind of symptomatic of that, to the point where I think Trossard, with a big game to come against City, Trossard has got to start.
Took his goal well, didn't he? Overall, Don, how much of a blip is this?
Yeah, it's a big one. I think credit Brentford. I think when you mentioned it before, Dan, I mean, they're not scared of the big boys. They've took points off Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs. They've beaten Man U, Man City and Liverpool, so they're not an easy side to play against. I thought Odegaard looked tired today, and I thought what happened watching the game is I thought Brentford got back into their 3, 2 wing-backs to make it 5, and Arsenal sort of got in areas and they were a little bit caught between trying to play, then putting crosses in the box. The last thing Arsenal needed with 20 minutes, half an hour to go was to panic, be desperate and throw crosses in the box, because that's exactly what Ben Mee wanted, Aya wanted, Ethan Pinnock wanted as well. 3 big, sturdy centre-backs who were fantastic in the air. And all of a sudden, they couldn't find the answer. They looked a little bit late, but I mean, fascinating how it sets up now midweek. I mean, if Man City beat Villa tomorrow and Man City beat Arsenal midweek, Man City go top of the league. So midweek is a huge game, Arsenal versus Man City.
I mean, you have to say, Toney and Mboma were a handful.
Yeah.
I mean, a proper handful. Toney for most of the almost all the game, and Mboma came off, I believe. Going back to Arsenal, we talked about Martinelli a little bit, Odegaard. Saw him last week at Everton taking touch and touch and touch. And maybe that's because the options are not there like they were 3 months ago or whatever it was. But if you looked at the passing from some of the players today, Xhaka talked about them, you know, being a little slower. That was because, you know, they're either passing it square or passing it behind somebody. Even Zinchenko tried to pass it out to Martinelli, letting the fullback, and particularly in the first half, letting the fullback get in and win it. It just doesn't, and I'm wondering if this is a little bit of a consequence of the crowd. The crowd are not on the back; they've loved what they're seeing,
right?
But they're a little bit more agitated.
You think a little bit nervous?
I think they're a little bit more nervous, and that transpires through when the game's tight, and teams are creating chances like Brentford did, and teams are hard to beat and break down like Brentford were, and their passing was just. And Man City have been the same. You know, we looked at them at Tottenham last week or whenever it was, and their passing was exactly the same. It was nowhere near as crisp. You had people like Rodri giving the ball away for fun, and I'm seeing that a little bit with this Arsenal team now. It's how they're going to regroup and recuperate, isn't it? It's going to be the determining factor in terms of how they're going to finish the season.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.